Hello, diggity donks. Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone, on this 23rd day of April 2026 for episode 299, 299 of my live chat. I appreciate you being here. We have, I ordinarily say we have a lot to get to, and there certainly is some stuff to get to. I feel like it's real quiet in the fight game right now. There's not a lot of interesting news in boxing. On the MMA side, you've got Arman Tsarukyan accusing Ilia Topuria of shaving his ass. Feel like the cupboard's a little bit bare in that regard. Your mileage might vary. In any event, whatever you want to get to, we'll get to today. So thumbs up if you're watching. Now, normally we go 3 p.m., and I know last week we had a different time, a different day. And then today we're an hour earlier. I do think that's like continually moving this around is going to affect viewership. I am sorry about that. I am traveling today because I'm going to call some XFC fights this weekend. So I have to go catch a bird at the end of this, which means I got to go fight traffic to get to the airport. So I have to move this one up 1 hour. I am quite certain I'm not traveling next week. We'll be back to 3 p.m. and hopefully from here on out for quite a while. Even the next pregame is going to be on a Wednesday, not a Thursday. So this is my hope. I am sorry for moving it around. It comes at a cost to me because it affects viewership, so I apologize for that. But I appreciate everyone being here. Thank you so much. The way this works is I put up a post yesterday. Barely, I got it up in time. But I put up a post yesterday. You guys fill it up with questions. You vote to the top, the ones you like the most. I answer those. We'll do that for about an hour. And then after that, we'll do the paid portion where two options. One, you can put in a donation into the super chat. They are greatly appreciated. They do go a long way. Thank you to everyone who considers that. Or you could become a member and you can do that for free. I think Othello will be here soon. We'll see. And then I'll make sure we get your, let me text him now, as a matter of fact, because I don't see him. Let me text him. Make sure we can get this done the right way. Here he is. Live now on. Okay. But if you just want to hang out and you don't want to pay for nothing because, hey, it's not in the budget, that's cool too. I appreciate you being here. All right? All right, we got a lot to get to. So without further ado, let's get this party started, shall we? What else did I have to say? Nothing of any importance. All right. So if that's out of the way, let me just change this part. Yes. And then let's get to these questions. Let's get to these questions. All right. Luke, the update on Dana's missing phone from the antitrust case is legit laughable, almost like the dog ate my homework type of excuse. Did you guys see this? Basically, one of the claims that Dana White and UFC and TKO were asked to produce a certain amount of text messages and emails, and I guess they have to surrender your phones, and they couldn't find one of Dana's phones, and they had told the judge that they weren't sure where it was, but they thought that maybe one of Ari Emanuel's kids had stolen it. And then they come back yesterday, as a matter of fact, this week. And they said, oh, no. Actually, he didn't steal it. We found it in the back of, I think it may have been one of Dana's cars. Something like that. So like magically it appeared after it couldn't appear for like weeks and months at a time. And they come up with this story about Ari Emanuel's kid literally stealing it, all for it to be like, oh, we found it in the back of a car. Okay. I mean, not like utterly implausible, but one of those scenarios where you're like, I have questions about that. All right, thoughts on Joe Rogan at the White House press conference. I I thought it was interesting. I thought a lot of people were killing him and without really explaining exactly what he was doing wrong. I mean, the idea would be, of course, that just associating with Trump in any capacity is wrong. But I mean, here's what I would say, right? I don't know much about ibogaine, however you probably pronounce it, the psychedelic that they want restrictions loosened on in order for research to advance on it, because they feel like some of the early returns on it are really promising. Somebody I know who is a scientist told me that they remain not skeptical, but that they remain unconvinced, and that some of the design of the studies of this drug that Rogan cites are really incomplete. I don't know. I don't know what the value of the drug is, to be honest with you. Suffice to say that people I do trust have some questions about it, but I don't really know what the value of the drug is. However, does it seem like it's necessarily like the end of the world that they're going to further research on it? Certainly not. I will say that a podcaster calling up the president to get FDA authority granted, I don't think the process should work like that. I mean, that's not my biggest complaint, but I just don't. If this ends up yielding good results, we'll all be happy with the results that it yields. But I would just say, as like a process argument, this is probably not how FDA authorization should function. There should be normal channels of this, and it should not be given favoritism to whoever the president likes or dislikes. Just as a general rule. But I mean, none of that is really my biggest takeaway, because I don't really know what the value of the medicine is. I don't think it's necessarily some kind of scandal per se that they're trying to get better testing. Like those things don't really animate me. The thing that I come back to is that I think there is a way to look at this scenario and say to yourself, hey, might Rogan be doing some good with this effort to get this drug tested, particularly for very vulnerable populations, veterans? It wouldn't be limited to them, but certainly them on top of it, or maybe as a core feature. But the reality is, like, the way in which he maintains this relationship with Trump in order to be able to just like call him or text him and say, hey, I think this is important, and then for the president to say, here's FDA authorization. This requires a certain closeness with Trump, which I don't mean to say is by itself automatically the issue. The issue is that in order to maintain that connection, in order to maintain these efforts that the administration is now giving favor to, it requires a bit of being all in on Trump generally. Now, I'm not here to say he won't necessarily offer some mild, vague criticism of Trump at some point in the future. But the point I'm trying to make is he's trying to maintain an association with Trump. And it's not like you can criticize Trump, in any kind of way that hardly, if at all, and then maintain it. So the point I'm trying to make is it is at least conceivable to me that he is pursuing a noble end here that could be valuable. It could be nothing too. We shall see. But the reality is, in order to have these kinds of goals achieved and the way in which he is achieving them, it requires a relationship to the president that makes his ability to comment on it or to interrogate its bad side very, 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 very compromised. You just can't do it. You have to be separated from the administration in order to be, truly without compromise from it. And so we'll see in the end what fruits these efforts bear. But I just think that when folks are like, oh, like I often throw cold water when people are like, oh yeah, Rogan's really going after Trump. I'm like, not really. Like, they maintain a close association. And like, Trump famously doesn't tolerate even a shred of criticism from even longtime supporters. He'll cast them out immediately. Like, it's very much, for the most part, zero sum or something pretty close to it. And I think that if Rogan is trying to maintain access to this circle and to these halls of power, it requires a compromise on the other end of things that he could and arguably should do. So when the next time he offers oh yeah, I think it's real bad that ICE is warehousing little kids, thousands of little kids across the country, oh, he's finally turning on Trump. No, he's not. He can't. He'd have to fully abandon all of this. And I don't think he's really prepared to do that. Also, let me say something here, if I may. There are a lot of chuds in the chat here on YouTube, and the chuds are an inch. There is something about male low IQ losers I tend to do an enormous amount of triggering on. They are clearly the most sensitive to the things that I say. My very existence to them is difficult for them to wrap their head around. And the reality about the modern internet is that there's really, I mean, you could just say anodyne things and you can avoid all of this. But if you want to have any kind of a perspective that's even halfway different or interesting, you're going to say things that are going to generate these kinds of responses. I think I tend to trigger low IQ losers more than most, but certainly, you know, it can happen across the board. And the good news is, like, the real tragedy is when you have people who pay attention to what you do, who hate you. However, you can't monetize them, right? Because they're not actually there on your platforms taking it in. They're only taking in, you know, whatever aggregated version of it after the fact from another creator or another place, right? So that would be the real tragedy. But that's not actually my situation. My situation is they show up here. They're literally in the chat, right? They're literally watching. So they are helping me to monetize this operation. So therefore, to me, it is worth tolerating them on some level. However, for folks who don't want to tolerate them, there is now a companion chat on my Substack that I can assure you is chud free. So to me, the chuds are welcome to stay here because it makes me money in the end. But if you don't want to deal with it and you want to just be around people who, you know, read above a 5th grade level, I got you right here. There's now a chat functionality around the live chats on my Substack for folks who just don't want to deal with that kind of a thing. So up to you. Okay. Luke, longtime listener from Australia. All right, very good. Do you think the U.S. would be in a better place in 2026 if Donald Trump won the 2020 election? Yes. Or would we just have seen 2026 4 years earlier? No. No. I mean, it's of course impossible to say, but the major difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2 was what happened in the time in between them. Again, this is something where it's like, you know, all these guys are on the right are like, I had no idea this would be different. And it's like everyone on the left being like, how did you not know it would be different? All of the guardrails that prevented him from doing stuff faded after the first administration. And then they hollowed out the entire Republican Party's leadership between the first and second Trump administration. And that's where Project 2025 was born. So the point I'm trying to make is what they did in between the first and second administration during the Biden years was they completely altered the Republican National Committee, changing all of the leadership, making it entirely pro-Trump. They got their ground game together to get election deniers in a ton of different states and different like key positions of, you know, election integrity and security and maintenance. And then more to the point, they were able to have like the think tank side of things, the Heritage Foundation, come up with this big, bold plan. In other words, it gave them time to reconstitute themselves, change the obstacles that prevented them from having more of their agenda enforced in the first administration, and really hit the ground running with a plan in the second one. That time off, it turned out to be very, very significantly beneficial for them in the end. So no, I think if you had just continued on, I mean, again, who's to say it could have been bad? I don't know. You know, maybe he makes another catastrophic error, but it's just very hard to not look at that space of the Biden years and all of the different ways in which they were able to reconstitute the movement and think these would have been equivalent forces. They learned, they adapted, and ultimately, you know, the country never really punished Donald Trump for trying to use a fake elector scheme to steal a presidential election. I mean, I guess that wouldn't have happened if he'd been reelected. Well, I mean, if he'd been reelected, we wouldn't have had a Jan 6, you know. And so, yeah, I do think there's at least a strong likelihood that it's worse as a consequence than it would have been if he had just gone all the way through. Who's to say in the end? But I think there's good reason to believe it is worse. There's been a lot of back and forth about the Topuria Makhachev White House fight and why it didn't happen. Topuria went on Helwani yesterday and tried to shore up the argument that Islam ducked the fight out of fear of taking an L. I've seen very little commentary from this perspective, but I suspect that Islam has strong convictions against fighting at the White House given the present political climate, to put it mildly. That's not what I hear. I can see him telling himself that it would be an embarrassment to his family or community to be put in a situation to make nice with Trump given the wars and shit-talking Trump has done about Muslims. It's not what I hear. I mean, maybe he feels that way privately, but that's not what I hear. Am I way off track? We also don't know exactly what he thinks, so it's speculation. Thanks. And I appreciate your support. That's not what I hear. No. I have not heard anything behind the scenes that in any way substantiates any claim that he turned down fights for the White House card. I have not. In fact, I've heard the exact opposite. I have not heard that. Like people being so like it fell apart for whatever reason. They publicly floated its injury. I don't. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. I have no idea. But nothing I heard ever suggested, not once, that he turned anything down. No. My understanding is he was game. All right. Luke, buy or sell these 5 MMA. Well, let me say one thing about this. I'm not saying that this question seems not this way. This question seems to take the desires and the wants of Islam seriously. So I'm not in any way impugning the question itself at all. But the question is sort of about this kind of sense. It is very weird that the fan base and the sport treats its best guy with such skepticism. I got to tell you, I find it strange. Now, of course, it's rival fighters are going to say just about anything about their rivals in a negative way. Like, and we all know the stories. It's the fight game. People say mean things to each other. Fair enough. I don't expect fighters to necessarily be like, oh, I really understand why this fight fell through, or, why he chose this fight over that fight or whatever. Like I get that rivals are going to say disparaging things and that can drive conversation. But like the degree to which there is skepticism around Islam Makhachev, despite only doing great, is real weird to me, man. Is real weird to me. Islam is fucking awesome. He's super tough and he's ridiculously talented. Maybe you like him as a person, maybe you don't. Fine. Maybe he's your favorite fighter, maybe he's not. Fine. Fair game. But I will tell you, like in my lifetime, I mean, that's not true. There was a while there, like deep into John Jones's run, where towards the end there, everyone was like, oh, he only wins because he has long arms, and of course his reach is one of his key weapons. It's not to say there's nothing to that. But the point I'm trying to make is like there was a lot, and of course he was a dirtbag, so there was a lot of skepticism around him too. But it's like Islam just wins, doesn't get in trouble, and is constantly having to face media cycles where people are impugning his courage or willingness to take on challenges. And again, I'm not saying that there aren't parts of his resume that could have been boosted in one direction or the other, depending on what the UFC wanted. But given what the UFC wanted, given the timeline of his career, and then, given when he ultimately he only fucking wins. It's a little strange to me. All right. Buy or sell these 5 MMA hot takes. Hot take 1. Conor McGregor was ultimately bad for the sport of MMA, even if he was good for the business of the UFC. Double champions, lame trash talk attempts. No. I think there are definitely bad parts to what Conor. Here, let me take this off. I think there are bad parts to what Conor did. Part of it is the double champ stuff has been a bit of a mess, certainly. The fact that people just look the other way on his sex crimes is, I think, a gigantic indictment of the sport. But, like, given what he did for the sport overall, I'm not here to say that, like, oh, that, we don't have to worry about any of the bad things he's ever done. That's not my point. But my point is, like, did MMA benefit more than it suffered? I think that it did. MMA fans' recency bias is the worst in all of sports. That might be yes, but only because fan turnover is so high. But I don't think there's anything magical about MMA fandom that makes it more full of recency bias than other places. But okay, if MVP MMA puts on 3 or 4 cards per year and begins building a roster, they'll leapfrog PFL within 2 years. I mean, guys, they're going to put on in their first event numbers that PFL will literally never reach. So, like, I don't even know what this means. They'll leapfrog PFL. In what way? You mean like as a sort of league, or not league, but as a promotion, they'll what? They'll have a bigger footprint. They'll have a bigger footprint after the first one. But what PFL is trying to be is this kind of like all-inclusive territory where they've got divisions and contenders and champions and weight classes and rivalries, and they have the ability to put on shows week after week after week. Like, PFL will beat MVP MMA in terms of the breadth, if not so much the depth, although there might be an argument there too, actually. It will beat MVP MMA. However, on the celebrity side of it, they already can't compete. So I don't really, people need to be very clear about what this means. They're going to be a more recognized number 2 promotion. They might get that already just off the strength of this one event, but it doesn't mean that they can do what PFL can do or vice versa. They're kind of different. And if you're measuring full promotion versus these, like, they don't even have champions. They don't have a roster. They just got an event. I'd be very, very careful about, like, saying, oh, they leapfrog PFL. In what way? Looking at significant strike stats like baskets in an NBA game has warped how many fans view fights, quantitative versus qualitative. I mean, that is true, but I don't think it's the biggest problem in the world. And then last, head-to-head matchups don't always guarantee one fighter is better. They might just be better that night. That is so obviously true. Did a parent or a spouse die 2 months ago? Are you broke? Do you have some kind of medical issue that you're suffering through? I'm not even kidding. Did you have a good night's sleep the night before? Are you managing stress? Did you properly hydrate? Did your weight cut go the way that it was? I mean, like, any of these things can fuck you up. Now, the better you are, that the less those things can fuck you up, but they can easily fuck you up. Of course. No question about it. From Coachella to WWE, what is the nature of this question? We truly seem to live in an era where the average person has to go into debt to experience entertainment products that are vastly inferior to their past iterations. On top of that, the stock market is roaring while nothing has been done to address housing, healthcare, and affordability. Meanwhile, insider trading is rampant. People are betting on everything. Trump's people, ostensibly going to Pakistan and the Middle East to negotiate an end to the Iran war, are also the side quest of leveraging U.S. power to enrich themselves at our expense. All of this is a lot. How long can we carry on like this until the whole house of cards collapses? P.S. You ain't the only one who can't sleep. I'm not sure how anyone paying attention could. Yeah. I saw my shrink yesterday just for like a random checkup. She thinks I'm having nightmares I don't remember because of the way I'm waking up in the middle of the night, and there's a bunch of like symptoms that I'm matching as a consequence. She thinks I'm having nightmares I don't remember, which is like, I'm not even sure what to do with that information, to be honest with you. I don't know what the answer to this question is. I tend to think that what's going to break it is people seem to think that, they'll just stop paying for ticket prices. And on some level, there will be, decline. But you got to remember, like I made this point before, brands have adjusted how they are marketing to consumers. And what a lot of them are doing are realizing that luxury spending is going up. And so they can narrow the scope of products and prices that they offer. And so they don't sell as much inventory, but because the prices are so much higher, they're actually making more than ever. You might be saying, well, aren't they just pricing out the average consumer? Yes. Yes. I mean, I think on a fundamental level, costs are out of control. And I don't think that, for example, getting rid of things like surveillance pricing is going to fix all the problems. But I do think that on a basic level, there is so much going on in the American economy that is predatory of the average American worker that it's kind of shocking. It's kind of shocking. And I think doing an exhaustive review of all the things that are, in fact, impoverishing the average American need to be reviewed and then ameliorated in best they can. Like other things, for example, like going to Medicare for all, I think is just the only approach going forward. The way what we have now is certainly not sustainable. And even for people who have insurance, the way in which that hospital care cost is exploding is going to make it unsustainable, but for all but a few. Like we don't even have an option. I don't really believe in that regard. As I mentioned, surveillance pricing and some of these other mechanisms. But to answer the question, I actually think what's going to happen is some other kind of systemic shock to the system that ends up kind of exposing all of this for what it is, which is this: they're just stealing from us. All of these companies are just fucking stealing from us. They realize that they've got us pinned. We have, not no choice. You have always choices, but they have severely constrained them, and they have made it such that need. Then no one has to go to WrestleMania per se, but ticket prices across the board are expensive. It's not merely just WrestleMania. They're just extracting wealth from us. I think getting on top of private equity in the economy is extremely important. Private equity has business in housing. Private equity has business in healthcare costs, and they are absolutely robbing us blind while they're destroying many key, not merely avenues of upward mobility, but assets that we actually just need for our lives generally. I think that's another key part of it. Like the American economy is full of grift and rot. And a systemic overhaul is going to be required to improve any of this, which is why I'm not believe me, I am not in any way hoping. Frankly, I'm kind of worried about the energy crisis that is going to hit us. I just really wonder, what that's going to do. Like, what network effects is that going to have? As it ripples into every part of the economy as a consequence. I actually think one of those kinds of things has a chance to begin to rein in some of these abusive practices. But as long as the current regime is in power, none of this is, I guess if the energy crisis is bad enough, there might be something. But the point I'm trying to make is, absent some other way where their hand is genuinely forced, it's not going to happen. But understand too, we've been letting the wealthy steal from us more and more incrementally for quite some time. It's going to take some time to undo that, even if we had a dedicated, enacted, full-throated plan. Luke, you noted coordination between Senator Cruz and Nick Khan regarding the middleweight rankings. Yes. Given Khan's defense that TKO is transparent because it's a public company, how critical is the distinction between SEC mandated aggregate reporting and the Ali Act's per event financial disclosures? Pretty significant. Is the UBO status essentially a financial blackout clause designed to hide the event specific profit margins required for a fighter to negotiate their true market value? You got it. That is it. Yes. As a publicly traded company, there are some broad-based details about financial transparency that they are legally required to produce. By the way, ask yourself, if they weren't legally required to produce them, would they? You know what I mean? We're committed to transparency. No, I wouldn't say your company is committed to transparency, Nick. You guys were the ones that have gone to Nevada as well as other states and lobbied to get fighter purses turned into private proprietary matters. No, you're not the transparency group. Sorry. That argument is shit. Now, whether or not it ends up being effective is a different argument, but it's a very shit argument. This is a group deeply devoted to the concealment of information, not the sharing of it. But yes, the basic idea is that the Ali Act would require on a if Boots fights on a card against Virgil Ortiz, right? Boots is going to be entitled to know what did that event generate at the gate. I'm not sure how much. Oh yeah, no concession. Any point of sale. So closed circuit, pay-per-view, whatever, anything that the event generated to make money. Obviously, the fighter is a significant contributor to that. So they're going to be able to know where they fit in, like how much money did it make and where did it make, and what should be my cut, to what extent am I responsible. You get a sense of like what your market value is as a consequence. That's the nature of why the law was enacted. It's to give the fighter a leg up in these discussions with the promoter, whereas these sort of broad-based quarterly reports, they certainly have some itemization, but they don't do that. And God, it fucking killed me yesterday listening to this fucking hearing and no one on the panel making this point, except Jackie Rosen, who, by the way, a Democratic senator who's taken money from TKO. She's from Nevada. I will say TKO within Nevada itself, they'll give money to both sides. That is certainly true. But of course, that's just about getting their interests secured within the state. It's not really because like, oh, we also like the Dems. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to make is she had to ask Oscar a million times, okay, so like, but what revenue are you talking about, sir? And then like after 7 or 8 tries, he finally comes back to, oh, it's the event revenue. And she's like, the event revenue, right? She's like, oh, okay. And it's like, oh my God, bro. Oh my God. How the fuck are y'all? Oh my God. I mean, it's over. It's over, folks. One thing I will say that Max Kellerman was right about was that when he said he had met with, I think, Nick Khan, I think is his agent or was his agent at one point. Not his agent now, but like was his agent at one point. And he said before he came out of like his hiatus, he had a meeting with Dana White and had a meeting with Nick Khan, and maybe Ari was there too, I'm not sure. And that, they laid out their vision for what they want to do. And then he later said, upon hearing this vision, I realized that the game was already over. You know what I mean? Okay. Anyway, he was right. The game is over. The game is over. The game is over to the detriment of the aggrieved populations, but it is over. It is certainly over. You can't be this bad, this late into the effort. And, we're talking about an effort that literally is starting at the White House. Guys, understand something about the Ali Act. Do you realize that the first labor bill that Congress took up this year is the fucking Ali Act? Do you realize that? Of all the things going on in the American economy, I'm not here to say like I'm against in all ways boxing labor regulations. Hey, if they were able to do this in a way that like was productive, I'd be overjoyed. But I'm trying to point out something. Do you realize think about what is happening in the American economy right now? Think about how much there are, to the previous question's point, how many things are upside down. And then wrap your head around the fact that the very first labor bill that this Congress took up this year was the Ali Act, which isn't even really a labor bill in the sense of expanding labor rights. It's a contraction of labor rights, but you get the point. Like, that's the first fucking one. This is coming from the White House, and they are telling the Republican staffers on the House committee or on the Senate committee, yo, this is a fucking priority for us. Move it along. And so that's what you're seeing. That is what you are seeing. And you've still got Oscar being up there, being unable to answer basic questions about what the protections of the Ali Act entails. Now, Oscar is still Oscar. He is still a huge, name that counts. And even his opening remarks turned into write-ups from like Reuters and other places. So, you know, there's still some value to what he did, certainly, but it's like, dude, if you're this bad, this late in the game against this kind of an effort, bro, it's curtains for you, bro. It's curtains for you, you know. So, I don't even know what to say, man. That watching that yesterday was just like, dude, just honestly, after it was over, I was like, man, just get this shit over with. Just pass this shit already. You know what I mean? Just pass this shit already. The original Ali Act, it took 2 years before it went. Once it was passed, there was a 2-year gap before it could go into effect. So it didn't go into effect until 2002. This one only has a month. So if this passes a month later, there's going to be a fucking UBO. Like, just get it over with. You know what I mean? How legal is the UFC's practice of buying their competition? Are there no laws in place to prevent this type of monopolization? That's a great question. It's a better one for an economist, but I spoke to a few economists the last couple of years about this question. Here's how I understand it. Can you buy your competition with the purpose of shutting them down in certain circumstances? Yes, it is possible. The basic pure intent, as I understand it, is not necessarily enough to trigger antitrust considerations, and those would be the Sherman Act or the Clayton Act, right? So those are the two ones we're talking about here. The way it was explained to me was that they have to buy it to shut it down, and then it has to kind of meet like different criteria. Not all of them, but some of them. For example, does it trigger from an independent agency? Does it trigger, you know, regulatory scrutiny? In which case, then Congress might get involved in some capacity. Or on the flip side, if you bought it and it was already failing and then you shut it down, they don't consider that to be bad. But if you did it to obtain an unhealthy amount of market share, then that is considered against, you know, the existing antitrust laws. So just the intent to shut it down is not necessarily enough. But the intent to shut it down is a starting point, and then you ask another series of criteria. And if it was done to obtain unusually advantageous market position, yes. So then it comes under scrutiny. So like this is the Strikeforce one. Strikeforce wasn't necessarily killing it, but it wasn't going to go out of business immediately by any stretch of the imagination. It would have survived for longer, and that purchase did enable them to have market share that gave them a huge leg up as a consequence. That to me is like a clear, or you know, Shuddering Pride too, although that one has some different ones because of the Yakuza element. But certainly the Strikeforce one is like WEC too, so clearly designed to be anti-competitive. Let's see, Luke, when you were training jiu-jitsu, what was your favorite way to pass, favorite sweep, favorite go-to sub? Big dude, top heavy, pressure pass, over under pass, Toriando pass. Yeah, those are the two big ones. Honestly, I mean, obviously it depends on standing or not, but a knee cut was another big one. And granted, this is a long time ago, so like the game is kind of updated, but those I'd say were the big three: Toriando, knee cut, and maybe over under. Depending on the, you know, half guard, standing, whatever, knee shield, whatever. All right, favorite sweep, probably the waiter sweep. I wasn't too good at it, but that was fucking fun. The waiter sweep was fun. Flower sweep was a good one too. And then go-to submission. Was my favorite was bow and arrow, but what was my go-to? Probably Kimura. Big guy sub, right? Tucker Carlson apologized for supporting Trump with very sinister motives, but which supporters will turn on Trump publicly next, and what actual impact can this have on the political landscape of the U.S.? I have no idea who's going to turn next. I just think this is just evidence of the coalition cracking up. That's sort of what you're seeing here. And then people also, part of what Tucker's trying to do is set up Vance for 2028. So there's a bit of a sort of getting ahead of the problem and trying to marshal resources for that, what they're hoping is an eventuality. And so, you know, this this is, listen, I'm sure that he doesn't like Trump and that he probably on some level has some regret about it. He's been very good about being on the anti-war side of things, although, you know, he's got a lot of other views I consider pretty odious. But this is partly designed to, you know, minimize Trump in the way that he can. Also designed to, like, we're going to get Vance in there in 28, you know. But who's next? I don't know. Did you guys see that report from Dropsite News? Oh my God. Laura Loomer got those 2 Iranian women who are here on green cards, you know, legal permanent residents, who had the last name of the Iranian general Soleimani. And she accused them of being his relatives. Dropsite News looked into it. They have no relation to him whatsoever, but they're still trapped in ICE detention, potentially headed for deportation. So we just took 2 legal permanent residents who have nothing to do with anything happening, who have not committed a crime, who have no terrorist association, no military, foreign military association, nothing. Their only crime is that they had the same last name. And then Jigsaw decides to call the president. This is what I mean. Like, oh, like Rogan's just calling the president. Hey, you want FDA authorization? Sure. Like, I don't think that's how it's supposed to go. Same thing here. She's calling him up and being like, hey, these 2 people are here because they're the, you know, the relatives of this Iranian general you killed some time ago. We should get him out of here. Oh yeah, let's get him out of here. And like, what the fuck are, like, there's literally nothing to it. I hope that they sue the federal government for every penny they can get. St. Luke, you shouldn't call me that. Thoughts on Ariel's rant about how TKO has made the WWE's WrestleMania event soulless by having so many ads, shorter matches, sky-high ticket prices, and clickbait engagement. The crowd was even chanting, fuck TKO, towards the end. Well, I will tell you, I don't watch pro wrestling, but I did see a fair amount of consternation about it. I saw a shit ton of that. My understanding was night 2 was much better than night 1. I don't know what happened on night 2, but my understanding was people were a lot happier about it. Although I also did see on night 2 that some wrestler walked out, I don't know who, and they were airing a Snickers ad in the arena during his fucking walkout. Like, I mean, what? Guys, this is what private equity does. This is what I mean about the private equitization of the American economy. This is the entertainment economy, but it's the economy just the same, because they're not just in entertainment. As I mentioned, they're in housing and healthcare too. So two of their biggest actually areas of both growth and current market size are in healthcare and housing. This is where we are. You know what I mean? Like, Mark Shapiro. So I was talking to BC about this, and BC explained to me like 2 years in a row, TKO/Ari has ruined the WrestleMania main event. I guess last year, I didn't even know this, Travis Scott was in the main event. I don't know what happened with that one. And then this year they tried to get Pat McAfee in it, and then they got rejected, or maybe he pulled out. I'm not entirely sure of the point there, other than what BC told me, which was it was Ari just trying to shoehorn in his clients into WrestleMania. So like, look at that on dude, they have such little respect for the creative side. You guys know I'm not a pro wrestling fan, but like, you know, if you're going to do it, you got to do it with people who know what the fuck they're doing, with a good creative team. And they're literally willing to interfere with like the most important, like the main event creative decisions as a way to get their clients' attention. To say nothing of how they're extracting at the gate, I saw the concessions prices. Holy fucking, oh my God, they were crazy. So then you have all of that. I didn't see Ariel's rant specifically. This is what I mean about the nature of TKO. It's like, bro, unless they get broken up, right? Unless they get completely broken up, you're going to have to just figure out what your relationship is to the product going forward. Like, between the private equitization of it and the fact that it has these dominant market shares in at least 2 cases and potentially more going forward, you have to decide what your level of attachment to this brand is, what your level of commitment to it is, what you're willing to tolerate and what you're not, and then just kind of be comfortable with it. Because I'm not here to say that, like, oh, you shouldn't boycott things you don't like. If you don't like it, then, spend your dollars and your attention dollars however you like. That's certainly your personal decision, but or watch it. Like, it doesn't matter to me one way or the other. But like this idea that, like, oh, we can force the brand to do something different. Guys, it would have to get drastically worse before that would happen. And I'm not saying that it may not necessarily get there, but I'm just asking, like, what are you willing to suffer through before we do? And then who's to say how recoverable it is from that position? Like, you just kind of have to decide, am I okay with watching wrestling under these terms? Vocalize your displeasure. I think it's actually important to do that, but you have to also understand they're going to be resistant to it. Didn't you see Nick Khan? Like, he was at some symposium last week and he was like, yes, I hear all the complaints that they make, but I only make adjustments based on like these 3 R's, relevancy, results, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, that was his way of saying, I don't give a fuck about your stupid ass complaints until it shows up on my balance sheet. And because they have such an entrenched market position, a lot of people, let's just say on the WWE side, but UFC too, are going to be like, well, if it's this or nothing, I'll just take this. And that's what they know that. They know that. I mean, oh my God, I sound like a fucking broken record on this thing, but like, this is what I mean about the state of like why things are the way they are. This is what I mean. It leaves you with a choice of not being able to be like, hey man, like in a lot of businesses, hey, as a consumer, my feedback, it actually is quite relevant because if there's enough of it, the owner is going to buckle under the pressure of it. But these people are very, very deft at creating business arrangements that in huge ways insulate them from those pressures, both the competitive pressure as well as the consumer pressure. Remember, the point is not to beat the other competition. The point is to hit escape velocity so you hit a place where there isn't any anymore. That's what we're talking about here. That's the kind of businesses that they're building. I don't know what to tell you. You just have to figure out what you are comfortable with, and then that's just going to be that. I don't think you have to keep quiet about it. I think people are allowed to, as I mentioned, share their. It's important for fans to share how they feel, but at the same time, it's important then to recognize that these people have built businesses that are designed to make sure that they don't have to hear that unless it gets to dire conditions. I hate to tell you, man, that this is where we are now, and this is where we're going to be until somebody comes around and does something about it, or you just change your relationship to the sport or to WWE. Maybe you decide, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm just going to go watch AEW, or I don't know what I don't know. I don't know what the other ones in Japan would be or whatever. Like, just you'd have to go just watch that or something. I have not had a chance to read about this. I'm certainly aware of it, that Daniel Kinahan was arrested in Dubai. I did see Ariel ask, about it. He asked Darren Till about it. I did see that. I don't know. The Irish government was looking for him. I don't know. I am fully aware of what has happened. My only read on it is that Dubai might be trying to clean up its act as a way to maintain as much investment in the city as possible, or the emirate, I should say, the Emirates in general, that they might be trying to clean up their act as a way to make them as secure as possible for above board businesses and investment and alliances. But short of that, I'm not entirely sure. Forever listener for the chat. Thank you. Thanks for all the life advice you give us without you knowing. As a 33-year-old man who's struggling to find his thing to do in life, what are some things you would do to help figure out turning your passions into a career? I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would turn my passions into a career. I mean, listen, it's not an either or thing, but like you may not want to turn your passions into a career, to be honest with you. You actually may not want that. I mean, this is a complicated answer, but there might be a really great circumstance where your passions are part of what you do for your professional life. So, for example, people who just love to cook, becoming a chef, opening their own food truck, maybe a brick and mortar place, all of that kind of works, right? That could be the case. But, not everyone has to go that way. Like, I think that there is a lot of charm in a life where you do something that you're good at and something that you're comfortable with. Certainly, not doing something that you hate, something that you're comfortable with, but that ultimately that's not the same as like the way you lean into your passions. I'll make something up, right? Let's say you are a cook but you don't necessarily like it. It's good for making money, and I'm just going to make something up. You're into photography. Now again, you might figure out a way to make photography your business, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just enjoy it as a hobby. Like, I don't think everyone should be pressured to be like, here's what I'm meant to do. And then you just go and live out a professional existence in pursuit of that. I don't want to dissuade you from that if that's how you feel and that's your general orientation, but that's not the only path. Like, there's a lot of nobility in just doing a job for a job and then living a personal life with your loved ones and in pursuit of your own interests and hobbies, but not in the hope that it becomes the way in which you make your money. Just because you love it, just because like doing things you love and doing things that matter to you are important. It's important to like maintain these kinds of things in your life, not just for financial return, but for emotional and psychological and other forms of environmental returns. Like, there can be all kinds of reasons why you would want to do it that have nothing to do with how I'm going to pay the light bill this month. So first of all, just you got to be able to answer that question. If you are determined, I mean, to me, it's like if I had passions that were strong enough, then it would kind of tell me what I already needed to know. So, for example, if I was really into photography and I'm like, you know what, I want to like do this, like that would push me to come up with a plan of how to make money. Maybe you become a wedding photographer. Maybe you're so good you can be a nature photographer and you can sell your shots to National Geographic. I'm just making up something, but you get the idea. Like, it would automatically kind of push you. But if you don't even know if you're in that stage, what I would say is you have to back up a little bit further. And if you don't really know, what drives you and what's your raison d'etre, your reason to be, go try shit. Sign up for a fucking pottery class, go on a hike. I don't know, try something new in some new community in some new way that you've never done before. Like, go experience things that you've never experienced to see to what extent they matter to you, or like seeing the world and trying it will both shape who you are as well as kind of give you a sense of what you like and what you don't, what you respond to and what you don't. But you have to go and engage with the world first. And if you haven't done that yet, I just think if you're at the stage where like, okay, I know what my passions are, in most cases, folks will figure out how to make that work if they want to make it their professional existence. But if you're not even at that stage, then you need to just go try stuff. Look, I liked your video on the UFC. You see, you guys say, starting to regret the lovey-dovey Trump relationship. But like you said, it's a culture that's just not inviting to lefties anymore. Once a lot of the world realizes that Trump and MAGA was a stain on our country, do you think this will repel people from watching UFC? And then in parentheses, as a longtime hardcore fan with left-leaning beliefs, I can remember a time when the UFC wasn't this bastion of conservative beliefs. Can we get back to that? No, I don't think there's any going back. I mean, they might dial down how much the like political involvement after the White House is over. They might dial that down where they just really don't even lean into that anymore. That is certainly a possibility. And so in that sense, it will have, something of a reduced effect, which I don't think is a bad thing. But I mean, this is the point I made in the video for the guys who haven't seen it. It's like Dana White's trying to make this claim. He's like, this event is for everybody. If you love America, blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, who is this argument for? You've pushed out everyone in the sport who would have been receptive to that message. Like, dude, for example, MMA content thrives on Twitter. And like, you can go on Twitter and there's plenty of it. You can't, like, if you had to make money on Blue Sky, like covering MMA, you couldn't do it. The audience there doesn't want it. There's not enough people to care about it. It would fail. However, you can cover the NFL on Blue Sky. I've seen people do it. You can cover soccer on Blue Sky. I've seen people do it. Like, have huge audiences too, like not minimal ones, big ones. You can't even get close to it because the entire culture of the sport has now changed. Like, if you didn't know anything about UFC and then you watched it and you loved it, but like you don't have, you don't think calling people slurs is super fucking awesome, how long are you going to last when fighters are just doing it and there's like nothing that happens to them as a consequence? It's not going to work. Like, the people who would have been there are gone, and the new ones who come in, they're going to see the culture. It is inhospitable to anyone who doesn't have already one of these kinds of worldviews. They're going to realize that sooner or later. You know what I mean? Like, maybe it takes some longer than others, but they're going to realize it. So like, someone's gonna, to get back to any other place, and I certainly do not see this ever happening in my lifetime, you're gonna have to get someone who comes in and like tries to change the culture. But like, how much is that going to be? How much is the culture going to accept that? Like, this is one more time, folks. This is just what it is now. You have to decide what your proximity to all of this is going to be. Who do you like in the Jack Della Maddalena Prates fight? And do you think the winner should face Morales in a title eliminator, or is that too much of a kill off of a contender situation? I'll say this. I would like Morales to get one more before getting Islam, but I don't know if it's necessarily the winner of this fight, although I wouldn't hate that. I'd have to think about that. But I do want Morales to have one more fight. However, as it pertains to this one, I mean, it's an interesting one, dude. Like, Prates to me is not as slick and is not as, well, he's pretty slick, but he hits harder. But to me, he's not as complete a fighter as JDM. JDM does get hit a lot though, and so Prates' power is unforgiving. My feeling is that JDM has more ways to win it. And so I would give a slight lean to JDM while fully recognizing that Prates here is could easily play spoiler. So slight lean to JDM is what I would say. What will the future look for the Ruotolos as one seems to look to move away from MMA? Do you see them going to the UFC, or should MVP hitch their wagon to them? I mean, I don't know. That's the other part too about MVP. Is MVP really interested in building stars? They're interested in hiring stars. That's true. Are they interested in building them? Because the Ruotolos have the capacity to be, but are not, right? They're not stars. Nate Diaz is, a star. Ronda Rousey is a star. I don't know. This is what I mean. Like, someone was asking earlier about MVP leapfrogging PFL. In what way? If they don't really mature stars, they're only hiring them. These are not equivalent things. So my answer is, I don't, wherever they go, all I want is for their talent to be the most developed. And wherever that place is, I'm cool with it. This might be silly, but do you think with Hohet's willingness to slug, that could be a good matchup with the washed counterpuncher that is Lewis? If Blades was touching him up, I could see him getting caught unless he's just too athletic for Lewis and tires him out in 2 minutes. Yeah, I mean, that's the risk he runs. Lewis has tremendous power. Hello, he put out Blades, think about that. With one shot, no less. And that could be a big problem. Like, two heavyweights hitting each other for 15 minutes without anyone going down is a little bit, you got to wonder about the power there a little bit, but also their toughness, of course. I think what I would say is that the speed of Hohet and that the pressure of Hohet is enough to also just overwhelm Lewis at this stage of his career. But dude, Lewis has played spoiler a lot of times in ways that you didn't no odds makers didn't expect. And that makes this fight kind of interesting for that. I mean, but for that, this fight would not be that interesting. Like Hoheit has to kind of play it risky in order for Lewis to have a shot. But Hoheit plays it risky, so he's got a shot. You know what I mean? But Hoheit is more talented. He's faster, and he should be able to overwhelm Lewis. But, Greg Jackson's not going to be there. You know what I mean? So what does it mean that his head coach won't even be there, and how does that affect him? I don't know. We'll see. I'm certainly favoring Hoheit to win. A couple more of these. How does someone get into a congressional hearing? Very easily. Go to the building where it's at, go through security, go through the metal detectors, and then just go. It's free and not all. I mean, obviously, if it's a top secret thing, no, but like the overwhelming majority of these are just open to the public. Some are closed, as I indicated, but most of them are not. The three hearings been wide open. You just go. It's this is supposed to be a representative democracy. They can't do all of it behind closed doors. So, yeah, it's, sometimes it's at the Rayburn building, but it doesn't have to be there. It's other buildings on Capitol Hill that can go and have Senate hearings in or House hearings. So, yeah, that's it. Easy to go. That's a good question. I'll answer this one. Is there anything you've said or done on TV, the internet, that you don't want your daughter to see when she grows up? And more generally, how do you grapple with so much of what you've said being on record? In both cases, the answer is the same. I don't think too much about it. I think if you do think about it, you'll drive yourself crazy. I just try to live, listen, brother, you live on camera and you're just going to say dumb shit and you're going to do dumb shit. And that's just the reality. And there is an absolute avalanche of things in that way that I've said and done in the course of however long I've been doing this, and I can't get any of it back, and I'm not going to spend any time trying. I think if you just have a good relationship with your kid and you raise a reasonably, understanding person, then, and, obviously you have to shelter about some of what you say, then you just have to live your life. I think most stuff, people think that that stuff lives on the internet forever. Some of it lives on the internet forever. A lot of it is getting buried. That's why like Google search is so bad. You know what I mean? Like it's just actually hard to find old shit now. It's there. Yes, it's there forever, but it's like looking at a junkyard and just seeing giant piles and then saying to yourself, oh, well, everything is there. But it's like, yeah, but good luck collecting it. Of course, the more, noteworthy stuff tends to be easier to find, and it can be quite detrimental or good depending on your situation. But I don't really think too much about it. I'll cross that bridge when we get there. I have not lived perfectly, but I have tried to live authentically, and that's the best that I can do. And in the end, I just hope that's enough. That's it. All right. With that in mind, let's get to the paid portion here, even with our diminished audience. We got to get back to normal time next week. I'm sorry about that, guys, but I've just been busy as shit trying to get this stuff going. So here we are. All right. This gentleman asks, isn't it funny how they act like the Ali Revival Act will revive American boxing, yet the UFC has been unable to make American stars? This is what I've been saying a million times. It's like the governance structure of MMA and boxing, like in many ways they're similar, but in many ways they're completely different. And they both have the same problems. They both have the exact same problems. MMA's problems are a little bit less noteworthy in terms of getting a network television deal, although we'll see what PFL ends up doing outside of UFC. But it's the same problem. Like there's a combat sports problem that is happening. Also, he was just saying stuff like, we could invest in USA boxing with this Ali Revival Act to the point where it could affect, how many gold medals we get at the 2028 Olympics. Like, no, it can't. No, it can't. Like it would require much more and longer investment. And maybe they bring that, maybe they bring it. But like they were making promises about, like, the truth is, and this is true, there the best sales pitch that they have is what they are talking about in terms of putting money back into the American market. That to me is like the thing that like everyone else has been like, yeah, everything's great, we don't need anything, blah blah blah, and then TKO is like, everything's broken, but we're ready to put some money in here to make it better. And I think that is just like that is the best sales pitch I've seen anyone make about the Revival Act, even if those claims are hyperbolic. Do you think Strickland has any chance to stop the takedowns of Khamzat if DDP took him down 7 times? Yeah, sure. I mean, the question is not, or I should say, the question is less, can Strickland stop the takedown every time? Every time? I don't know. I don't think he can do it every time. Like, Khamzat's gonna get him down. The question is how many times can he stop it? Can he get to his feet? Right? I mean, you all saw Khamzat's control on DDP. Like, yeah, he was able to advance position, but then he couldn't do shit to put him away. So what does that mean for a guy who's maybe more familiar with the system, you know, that kind of a thing? Khamzat's gonna get him down. Like, I'd be shocked if he didn't. But over time, how long? I mean, the problem that Sean has, right? It'd be one thing if Sean, you'd be like, oh, okay. I mean, first of all, Sean has good takedown defense. Like, number one, he's got good. Is it enough to stop Khamzat every time? No, but he's got pretty good takedown defense. The real challenge for him is like, it's like, bro, you're also not heavy-handed. Like, that to me is the real problem. If he was heavy-handed, you'd be like, okay, you know, even if he has just a couple of minutes on the feet, he could probably be able to do some serious fucking damage. And then you're like, all right, well, now this is a ball game. But like, his style of stand-up requires like this accumulative weight added to it. I don't know how that's going to go. You know, I don't know how that's going to go. Predictions for the 2028 election? I'll say AOC versus JD Vance. Bjorn, how do Prime, Anderson, GSP, BJ, Fedor fare today? I think GSP would be champion. If BJ wasn't champion, he'd be fighting for a title. Fedor might be a little undersized, but I do think would be a threat. Anderson would be obviously very good, but I do think that the wrestling of Khamzat would be a real big problem for him. But GSP would be a champion, and the other two would be, if not champion, certainly champion adjacent, and maybe champion. Who is your favorite president in U.S. history? I don't even know if I fucking have one. But I mean, I guess FDR by virtue of the New Deal, but I don't think of it on. I don't have guys in political office that I idolize. You know, I recognize important contributions in cases where it's relevant, but who's your? It's like asking me who's, you know, like, I don't know how to. What is your favorite breath to take? It's like, well, I just need them. I don't. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think of them as like, I rank them or something, you know. Most skillful striker we've seen in MMA. There's been a lot of good kickboxers, dude. I mean, Poatan is obviously one of them, but there's been a long list of them. Stefan Leko was there. You know, I don't know if Remy ever fought MMA. He might have. But, you know, like Tenshin Nasukawa was a good kickboxer. He competed in MMA. A lot of guys for long periods of time when kickboxing competed, they just never, the problem was most were not very good in MMA. Like the newer ones, Izzy, Poatan, and now Yusri, and, you know, Vakitov for a time. The kickboxers today are just much, much better MMA fighters. But there's been good Mark Hunt. There's been good Krokop. There's been good kickboxers for a long time in MMA. JDM Prates, Inoue Nakatani, and Haggerty Yoza in one weekend. Combat Sports Christmas. Yeah, was this next month or in a week? In a week, right? Any chance for some guest spots to break down the non-MMA fights? That's a good question. I actually should do that. Yeah, I should do that. That's a good question. Because there's some fun-ass fights on the horizon. Who would I talk to about Haggerty Yoza, though? I'm not sure what the recommendation would be there. BMAC, welcome to the party. Is it possible for Yuri to implement a more patient part to his game whilst maintaining his iconic chaotic style? Not to the same degree. I think he has to dial parts of that back, right? I think that's the issue. He's got to dial parts of that back. But I don't think he can completely lose his identity and improve. You know what I mean? James, welcome to the party. Nice. Welcome to the party. College fun. Thank you, sir. Justin says, in honor of Live Chat 299, I still can't believe that Cheeto ate that knee and stayed conscious at UFC 299. Donks in the crowd said they heard it land. Yeah, dude, you can hear it land on tape. Cheeto has an all-time chin, bro. All-time. That's a Nogueira chin. He has an all fucking timer. He has the best chin of anyone below 155 pounds I think I've ever seen. What sparked your interest in politics? Was it from a young age or a specific event that made you pay attention to it more? Also, have you considered doing live streams on your political channel? Yes, on the last part, I have considered it, but I've also considered the fact that I'm drowning in existing responsibilities and I'm being pulled 1,000 ways, and so I can't really contribute to any one thing as much as I would like, and I don't think that's a recipe for long-term success. So I think some things I'm going to have to narrow the scope of what I'm doing. I mean, I've always just kind of been interested in what makes the world function and the international world in particular, and, you know, all those kinds of things. But more recently, in terms of making it part of my content, it was just the way in which MMA lost its mind, and then in particular the way the country lost its mind, and then this moment of deep peril. No Bros All Manos podcast. No Bros All Manos. All right. Thoughts on one championship in the situation with Rodtang? Well, they appear to have at least come to some resolution. So there was claims Rodtang was making that, like, oh, they claimed they had matching rights and they forged my signature, and that's not true. And then they filed suit against him in Thailand, threatened suit against him in Singapore, threatened suit against him in Japan. What they're going to do now is let him fight this one rematch in Japan for the one samurai card, and then they're going to let him out of his deal, which I think is the right thing. I don't really know what to make of Rodtang. He seems like a bit of a loose cannon, but one championship just has such onerous deals that you can't but help feel great for anybody trapped in them, you know? Really, outside MMA, what is your experience with needing to set boundaries with someone you were previously entangled with romantically? What is your experience with needing to set boundaries? I would say that here's what I would say. Number one, if you make good choices on the front end, you typically have to pay fewer costs on the other end. So if you find romantic partners who are reasonably good people, maybe they're not the right fit for you, but they're reasonably good people, when things fall apart, they don't do dumb shit. I've only had one person who did dumb shit, and it was the dumbest, like quite literally, like genuinely the dumbest person that I was ever linked with. What a handful she was. But in any event, so in general, I've not had to deal with it at all. But I don't really play that fucking game. Like, I'm going to say it one more time. If you pick up somebody as a partner who is a reasonable person, you have to play fewer of these games. You do understand that, right? Like, just as like a way to think about this, like, save yourself all of the problems, even if things fall apart, by just not being a part of someone's life who is unstable. But, you know, there's been times I've had to set boundaries for my own mental sanity. You know, there's been times where I had to set boundaries because someone was, you know, abusive verbally, but, you know, abusive. But that's really about it. In general, I've not had to do a ton of it, but I'm just not going to play games. Like, you know, once it turns sour, it's not going to all of a sudden go great, you know. MK all day. Thank you, Saul. With Arman fighting fans headbutting Hooker being a shit heat at RAF events, was the UFC correct in not risking a card headliner on him? I'm starting to see that argument. I mean, I understand their trepidation, but either the rankings are important or they're not. Again, everyone is being like, oh, Arman's a fuck up. He is a fuck up. I certainly agree. But the problem is, like, there is also a process that has to be honored, but which he has in general fulfilled. Like, if the promoter can just decide we don't want to give a guy an opportunity, and you might say, well, they're justified in this case, but like if they just have the latitude to do something like that, it's a bit of a problem. Like we just have final say over who gets title shots, even if there's a ranking system that we employ. And in this case, you might find it that their reasoning is sympathetic, but in many other cases you wouldn't. It's the same mechanism powering both of those. I mean, I think that's the issue. Luke, if you had to play gritty in a Flyers game, what would be your special move? Luke, did you see Trump's own military aides kicked him out of the room due to his erratic behavior? That's what the Wall Street Journal reported. They reported that they couldn't even it's not merely share details with him, but have him essentially in the situation room with them, making some of these decisions for fear of his erratic decision making. I mean, I mean, I'm all too happy. I mean, I don't know what to say to people about Trump. I mean, what is there to say anymore? Like, all we're all trying to do is just endure this without having to ration for energy or face nuclear Armageddon. Like that, we're not. What else is there to do? We're just trying to stay on the surfboard. You know what I mean? We're just trying to stay on the surfboard. This is not a guy you could trust to be your town mailman or dog catcher or even any other kind of mundane task. He's not up for it. I don't know what to say. I genuinely don't know what to say. I'm kind of like, I'm not like trumped out per se, but it's like how many different each day is some new revelation about some scam either he or his family is running, or about some agency out of control, or about some norm or law being broken, or about some incredibly stupid decision that they made months ago that is now the chickens are coming home to roost, or about some cockamamie scheme that they're trying to cook up to cover for how fucked up they've done it. Like, because of here's another one. The U.S. government got sideways with the Italian government for many reasons, not least of which is Trump going after the Pope and the Vatican. The Italian government did not like that shit. And including remember that there's a pretty right-wing government in Italy right now, and they, Meloni, and it was all supposed to be simpatico between this current administration and Meloni. They were very happy that she won, and she's fucking bitter at them, like super bitter at them. So what the Trump administration is proposing to kind of smooth things over is not let Iran into this World Cup, but put Italy back in the World Cup. Because the argument that they're making is that, well, they've won this, however many times, 3-4 times, so they didn't make it in. But like, if anyone was to get like a honorary, I think they're going to try and say, oh, Iran can't get in, so now we have an open spot, and then Italy makes sense. But it's just designed to smooth things over because they are so fucking bitter at them. Like, this is what I mean. We're going to pull in Italy into the World Cup to make Meloni happy with you because you shit on the Pope. Like, what? You know what I mean? I don't even know what to. It's like this is just what it is now. If Netflix announced 16 events starting 2027 with fighters earning 40% of revenue, could it compel top fighters to fight out their contracts? If the UFC lets them, without tolling provisions, matching rights, you name it, sure. Luke, I just got a new white truck. My wife wants me to nickname it, but every nickname with white in it sounds racist. Any ideas? You could just call it, I don't know. So skip the white part, or just call it like something that is white, like the cloud or the jizz, or something like that. Is Cody Garbrandt's performance against Dominic Cruz the single biggest outlier in a fighter's career, not including flash KOs, as any others that had an amazing one-time performance? It's up there. I'd have to think about that. Like guys who had like all-time one-timer. Matt Serra beating GSP might be better. Yeah, that's better. I mean, Matt Serra won the Ultimate Fighter Season 4, but limped to the finish line in a dog shit fight against Chris Lytle, and then punched GSP's fucking lights out. Yeah, it's that one. Thoughts on how the sport will rate Topuria if Justin upsets him at the White House, although the knives will be out? Would a loss cause him to have a longer or shorter career? I don't know about the second part, but Topuria is widely expected to win. I mean, everyone in the industry is like, oh, I feel bad for Justin. And, Topuria talks real greasy about all of his opponents. If he were to lose and get stopped, that would be catastrophic for his career. He'd get it back, but it would be bad. It would be bad. Luke, does lightweight Gilbert Burns beat Patty? Yes. Many good guys retiring lately, and it makes watching MMA harder every weekend. Lightweight Gilbert Burns would absolutely. Gilbert Burns was a fucking world champion in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, he's going to beat Patty, even the lightweight version of him. Yes. Luke, not to shill, but I ordered the perfect jean with your code, and they fit my 6'5" frame incredibly well, even better than the Levi's I've worn for many years. So thanks, buddy. I'm wearing the jeans now too. They are, in fact, great. Big thanks to our friends at The Perfect Jean. I'm pretty selective. The guys who help run this channel will tell you I'm pretty selective about, what brands I work with. And I'm happy to work with them. Same one, but I appreciate your being a member for so long. Love from Canada. Luke, I think the Islam skepticism is entirely output-based. By June, he will have fought 7 times in 79 months. 2 against Volk and 1 as a fill-in versus Moicano. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. But that would, I see Chimaev get killed for that too, but then no one really questions whether Chimaev is good or ducking, and also, Chimaev is aggro, but I think there's something about the quiet personality of Islam that makes people a little more hesitant to, I don't know, accept his willingness to do hard things or something. I'm not sure. I love you. Thank you, Christian. Last one, Luke, you mentioned grip strength last week. Check out Yves Gravel. He's a rock climber going into arm wrestling, multiple world records. Also, check out the band Corpse Pile from Houston. Jesus, that's quite the name. All right, Yves Gravel. I will look into that. Thank you. Luke, could you recommend media journalists that cover TKO and Monopoly critically expose corruption in boxing and pro wrestling? Who are the LTs and John Nash equivalents there? Brunch Boxing is a whole team of guys who do this. Brunch Boxing, they got a whole team of it. Bad Left Hook does some cool stuff too. I think it should be noted. You can go to them. Who else is there's Alan Dawson is pretty good on some of this stuff too. I will say Dan Canobio, I think, and Chris Algieri on their podcast, they do some pretty good stuff. Yeah, that should get you started. But there's some other ones too that are kind of floating who, Thomas Hauser, obviously. Sporting leagues like NBA, NFL, and NHL have been around for decades, but they don't seem nearly as predatory as the UFC. In your opinion, where is the UFC trending towards? I mean, they're also fucking predatory. It should be very clear. Maybe they're not quite as predatory as TKO seems to have a certain predatory DNA more than the other ones, I'll grant, but I don't want to let the other leagues off the hook for times in ways even currently that they're gouging the shit out of their customers. So especially the NFL with its rights deals and how all the different networks that show it and whatnot, that is really the one that is a huge problem. What was the first part of that question? Where is the UFC trending towards? Honestly, I think that they're going to just run this as long as they can, and I think it's clearly designed to be sold. I don't know when exactly. That part's a little harder to say, but this is what private equity does. I'm reading a book on private equity now called Bad Company. And one of the points that the author makes in the book is that people think that when private equity buys an asset, that they would want to take care of that asset to then flip it, in one way or the other to make money on it. And in certain cases that can be true, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, they can tear it up for parts and also make money and not care at all. Degradation and, in fact, elimination of the product. I'm not saying that that's what they want to do here. They've got a good thing going. They want to keep it. But the point I'm trying to make is the idea that the maximum upkeep is what they would naturally do to make money. That's just not how private equity functions. So I don't think they're going to try and ruin it in that sense, but I do think they're going to try and just keep this up as long as they can. And when that comes to an end, they're just going to flip it. Look, I sent you an email of a YouTube conversation between David Draymond and Billy Corgan. Not sure if you saw it or not. I did not. But I would like to get your take on it if you haven't. David Draymond is a dirtbag, piece of shit, loser, fucking genocidal freak. You guys know who this is? This is the lead singer of not Stained, Disturbed. The guy who was signing bombs that they were killing innocent people in Gaza with, that fucking guy. I couldn't give a fuck less about what he has to say about anything. Fuck David Draymond. Ever trained striking? Yes, some. If so, ever learned head kicks? Yes. I'd imagine them to be more difficult as a big guy, but also you don't have to lift your leg as high. You got the second part right. I don't have to lift my leg as high. Even other guys who are heavyweights are not necessarily always as tall as me, and even then the body is very available and it's powerful. Like, it wasn't one of my main weapons by any stretch of the imagination, but yes, but the fact that I didn't have to lift it too high was a big help. If Aljo wins on Saturday, is there any chance of him getting a title shot? Or are we going to get Volk Lopez 3? I'd say there's a shot. I don't think it's a great one, but I would say that there is one. Now, they moved this fight from making it a 3 to a 5-rounder, which Aljo didn't want. Are they setting him up here? I don't know. I guess we'll see. I think it's possible. I'd say 40-60 he doesn't get it, but no, I'd say 60-40 he doesn't get it, excuse me. But possible. Luke, what do you think of Fariz Ziam versus Tom Nolan? That fight kind of rocks. I don't have a strong opinion about it. Sorry, bro. Luke, regarding the Ali Act hearing, can you explain how someone would get selected to speak at a committee? They have to invite you. The way it works is that the ranking, so if the Republicans are in charge, they essentially run the committee, but they do a lot of, and if the Democrats are in charge, they do have to do the same thing where they have to kind of reach across the aisle and say, hey, we're going to run this hearing, but we want your input to have, some part of it. And so it looked to me like Cruz and Rosen had a very good relationship. Rosen is a Democrat, Cruz is a Republican. And so that's why they had 2 for the pro the legislation, 2 against. But you'll notice that was not the case in the hearing on Capitol Hill for the House side, where they had 3 that were in favor of the legislation and then just 1, Patrick English, who was against it. And that was, to me, a huge fucking problem. And in fact, I spoke to staffers on the Hill about that. And what they explained to me was that the Republicans was just like, we'll give you 1, but we're not, that's the most we're going to give you here. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm sure Democrats have done that or worse on some point. I'm just pointing out that like the partisanship affected what kind of hearing you got and who was ultimately selected. But once they told them, hey, we'll give you 1 slot, we'll give you 2 slots, then the leadership and the ranking members of that committee decide, who they're going to send an invite to. Luke, please look up Jim Cornette. He's a pro wrestling legend, staunch Trump critic. Really? You two must collaborate on something. The world needs it. You know who I like? I don't know anything about his pro wrestling, although he was huge. Kevin Nash. He seems cool as fuck. Luke, I recommend Hassan Piker's mini documentary on the aid trip he took to Cuba, showcasing the dire conditions the decades-long embargo has caused. If I have time, I will absolutely take a look. I appreciate the recommendation, although you have a weird screen name. There's a lot of things on my on Twitter. I go through and I like and I bookmark as many things as I can, but I just do. I'm telling you guys, like I have to cut back on some shit I'm doing because if you'll notice, I can barely do this. I can barely upload to my political channel. I can barely do Substack. I can, I maintain Morning Combat, but I can't fudge that. I have to do that the right way. It's just a lot. It's a lot. It's a shitload. Hi, Luke. I wanted to give some shine. The owner of Tail Up Goat, I've heard so many good things, but I've not been, opened up a new spot called Rye Bunny and a dope scratch kitchen chicken spot in Alexandria called Uncle C's. I've heard good things about Rye Bunny and Tail Up Goat. I don't know anything about Uncle C's, but good to know, and I appreciate the recommendation, bro. I'm going to make a video for everyone, like things to see in D.C. for the White House card. If you follow if you're a member here, I showed you where the MAGA bar was. It's actually another MAGA bar. There's 2 of them. But the one on Capitol Hill that I passed at the time was Butterworth's. That's one of the big ones. I've seen Kyle Kalinske talk about a national divorce with blue states making more money and better health metrics. Are there any downsides? Sure. There's going to be all kinds of people in red states who are going to be not able to move, who are going to be kind of trapped, who are not going to like that. I don't know that a national divorce, the amount of human misery that is caused as a consequence, I don't know is such a great idea. I understand the point that there's this imbalance between who are creating jobs and who have higher standards of living, and then who is end up subsidizing the cost of some of these poorer red states. Like this is very true. Like a lot of states, or some of the, I should say, it's not a lot, but some of the higher earning blue states, they send more to the federal government than they receive. And then there's this kind of imbalance here. It's like, if you guys like what you like so much, we can split this up. But I think that you're talking about, something that is, first of all, like totally implausible, and then more to the point, the kind of thing that would set in motion enormous human suffering. And I just don't quite understand the value of that. Has nobody noticed that the UFC at the White House was initially announced while they were in negotiations for the new TV deal, hence helping them to get a better deal, i.e. Trump paying back Dana for supporting him? I would have to go back and look at the timeline, but if that's true, that's a hell of a point. It was kind of funny. I did that Pablo Torre podcast, which I thought was great. And it's kind of funny, man. When those podcasts are over, you're like, oh, I think I said something that's really going to get people riled up. And then sometimes that happens. But then sometimes what happens is like people don't care about it at all. And then like a thing that you thought was mundane, everyone lost their shit over. So for example, in this one, I thought saying that TKO should be broken up, I thought that would yield people being like, oh, and nobody gave a fuck. And then I was like, oh yeah, they're going to lose money on the Paramount deal. And people lost their shit over that one. And it's like, guys, they've overpaid by several $100 million each year relative to what they were anticipating getting by splitting up the rights deal. Right. So it happened almost immediately, like very, very quickly. Like they just came in and they spent way above market rate to get them. That's one problem. And then there's this larger data about the contraction of MMA that is happening more generally. It's like, listen, I think they're probably going to get a bunch of subscribers at this White House event. We should be very clear about that, right? But we're just 6 months into 1/14 the way through. They got the other 13 halves of this to get through before it's all said and done. Like you're paying that much for a sport that is contracting domestically, and you were overpaying at the time when it's still got some cachet well above market rate. And people are like, oh, you're crazy for saying it. I guess we'll see, 7 years, we can talk about it, but I would be very surprised if this deal ends up being profitable for them. I don't understand how that's controversial. I really don't. I genuinely don't get that. And most of the comments are just saying like insulting shit, like, oh, what the fuck do you know about these international deals? Okay, fine. But like, what about the facts that I'm introducing here? They were talking about 800 or 900 million tops per year, and then that's splitting it up. And then we're 200 million more than that out of nowhere for a brand that is aligned with the regime, which the people who are now paying for those rights are also aligned with the regime. And this deal went through because the merger was approved by the regime. And I'm expected to believe this is just market rate. Okay, I guess we'll see. If the pendulum swings and MAGA is vilified in the court of public opinion the other way nefarious regimes eventually were, do you see the UFC changing? No. They would have to change the fan base. You'd have to rechange the culture again. Turns out it can be changed. Like the culture that grew up with MMA before Spike TV is different than the one that came after it. And now this one is different than the one that came, sort of up through that Fox ESPN era. This one is a little different too. This one is broier. This one is a little dumber. This one is, it's a lot of angry dudes who have like a right-leaning worldview, a lot less women, that kind of a thing. It changed in this direction. You could get a different result only after there was a concerted effort to change the culture. But short of that, no. Comments on the Atlantic article about Patel. I don't know what there is to say. You know, it's not just that. I mean, him partying to the point where they have to get battering rams to, get him up is one thing. But there was another article at the New York Times showing that Patel had the FBI investigate a New York Times reporter basically who was mean to his girlfriend or significant other, whatever she is, and that they ended up investigating her as a consequence, even as the DOJ told them they have no evidentiary basis by which to pursue anything. Like, that to me is the story. Oh, he's a drunk? Yeah. I mean, did you see him at the fucking hockey game? Like, he's a fucking drunk. Him and Hegseth, they're fucking drunks. I was a drunk. I don't drink hardly anymore, but I was a fucking drunk. Like, I know my peeps, bro. He's a drunk. But the fact that he would marshal the FBI's resources to go after perceived enemies on the flimsiest of grounds, I think to me is a little more troubling. I don't think Luke gets his news from illegitimate sources. He really likes Crystal and Sagar. They play both sides. What is the natter with the two of them? He also follows. I don't quite understand the question here. What is the natter? Is this a British word, or is it supposed to be what's the matter with the two of them? I don't think there is anything the matter with them. I like them. I like their show. Breaking Points is one of my favorite shows. I like it. I think it gives you news that you absolutely cannot get on cable and in most mainstream sources, and it's usually the right news. It's well informed. They have good guests. They go long on topics that are important. Like, I really like that show. Do I always agree with everything that is presented on there? Of course not, but I agree with a lot of it. But I just feel like they do a really great service. How do you think an Islam Hamzat fight would go? I've kind of been over this one. If it's at it's kind of like the Ilia and Islam fight. If it's at welterweight, I'd probably favor Islam. If it's at 185, I'd favor Hamzat, just because I think that the strain on his body, Hamzat would not be able to make him endure. He wouldn't be able to finish Islam, and then he would fall off a cliff where Islam would be able to win. At 85, he might be able to keep a pace better. Luke, Ronda starting to change her tune on concussions. She said she suffered. She now says they may be migraines. Any thoughts on this? I mean, $1 will get you to do crazy shit. You know what I mean? $1 will get you to do crazy shit. So a bunch of dollars will get you to do really crazy shit. I mean, either she's lying now or she was lying then. Either way, she's lying. Or has lied, I should say. One way or the other. I don't know which one it is. But I tend to think that the damage that she says she suffered is probably truer than, I've had migraines. You know what I mean? This or that. Your nickname is Rat Garbage or the Pink Pounder? Rat Garbage. Doing Delta 8s with BC or crack with Chuck? Ooh. I've done Delta 8s with BC, so I'm picking crack with Chuck. Joining a gathering of the Juggalos or joining a Viking metal row? I'll take the Juggalos 10 times out of 10. Hell yeah. Joe Rogan, I'm politically homeless. Then 2 weeks later is with Trump passing legislation in the Oval Office. This is the other part where he sort of describes himself as politically homeless. He's not. Like, again, is pursuing psychedelic research in the hopes of limiting veteran suicide a good thing? It seems on some level it could be. Again, we don't know whether the research will pan out to anything, but it doesn't seem like an ignoble goal. But the problem is, in order to maintain this circle of power, what you have to give up on the other end. And like, this is his circle. Luke, from Jersey heading to DC mid-July. Good luck, brother. It's hot as balls up here. Mom hates cars, so we're eyeing the bus train. How's Amtrak in July? Fine. Does it break down much? No more than it does in December. I'm Colombian. Any good Colombian spots in DC? Yes, thank you. Crushing it. There's a couple of Colombian spots. There's one in College Park, which is just outside the city. There's a couple in Silver Spring, which are pretty good. There's Arepas Pues, which is a good one. In the city, there's two Colombian spots. One is like authentically Colombian, but very expensive, El Cielo, which for folks who don't speak Spanish literally translates to the sky. And then the other one is, I believe I went to it with my wife, and it's not, they don't call it Colombian, but it is. I saw an interview with the owner. I think it's called the Royal, which is next to LaDroit or LaJoie. Actually, I don't know how you pronounce it, but it's close to Big Bear Cafe, right off Rhode Island Avenue. It's dynamite. The Royal. LT, can we get a Luke Thomas is pissed, fuck you rant to the corporate centrist and diet MAGA, particularly going after Hassan? We did this last week. Like Sarah Longwell, I'm nervous for the left's chances. Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. The people who are like, you should campaign with Liz Cheney to the Dems. I'm not super interested in that political analysis, if I can be honest with you. But the point stands is like, I don't agree with everything Hassan has said, but this idea that like he's some kind of threat to the republic or the threat to the party when his views align with the base, almost like not quite, but almost 1-to-1, especially on like big important stuff like what do we do about Israel? He's much closer to the base than his critics are. There's this fear of like, oh, if you have muscular left policies, the public will reject it. And I think history has shown it's the opposite. You ever think how crazy it is that Laura Loomer has influence over Trump? Yeah, I mentioned this earlier. She got She got 2 Iranian green card holders arrested for something inaccurate. She's also an open bigot and seems unstable. I mean, but like this is who Trump surrounds himself with. We talked about this earlier in the show. When will gerrymandering stop being a thing? When both sides can agree to a gerrymandering block, but they don't. And so we're in a terrible spot where there's just constant gerrymandering happening to get an electoral edge, which I think is really bad for the country. But like, what are the Dems supposed to do? Oh, like all these crocodile tears from the Republicans about the Dems in Virginia. It's like, do I think what is happening in Virginia is good for democracy? Right? The just obvious fucking gerrymandering. Like, no. What choice do they have? They'll just get run over if they don't. They'll just get completely run over if they don't. They don't have a choice. Dems really going to roll out another lady? I don't care about that so much, as long as it's not Kamala. Luke, who gets the live chat donk of the year award? Yuri for his mercy or Oscar for his stupidity? No, Yuri for his mercy. That would be that's leading the clubhouse, or Johnny Walker for pulling himself into mount in his last 2 fights ago. Something weird in politics is so many Republican pundits acting outraged. Here we go. Over the VA maps. Do they not know Trump started this, or do they think that others don't remember? This is what I don't understand. It's like they wanted to do this redistricting in Texas before the census, in between censuses, and it was a naked gerrymandering grab. So then they respond in kind. So California does it. Well, now Indiana is, and they tried to get Indiana and some other places. We'll see about Florida. But it's like a tit for tat now. And again, I don't think that's good. Hello, I'd support a gerrymandering ban, but like that's just not where we are. And if you don't respond to what they're doing with what they're doing, you'll just get run over. It's where we are. With this one already. The fan base treats the best fighters however they think about their own selves in their own private lives and inside their minds. Weak and skeptical and non-believing. These are fan qualities. Okay. I'm not sure what to add to that, but all right. I've been going through Pride events, and one of my favorite fights so far is Bob Sapp versus Nogueira. Jesus, bro, that was a crime scene. Pride was big about putting on freak show fights. If you've never seen this, Nogueira gets basically his neck broken by being pile driven into the mat by Bob Sapp, who's nearly 400 pounds of muscle when this fight takes place. He eventually gets beaten, but he gets armbarred. I believe that's right. I haven't seen it in a long time. But yes, it's a vicious, vicious fucking fight. But Nogueira had a legendary performance in it. I'd imagine that TKO must have played a big role in banning Andreas Hale from WrestleMania. Yeah, who do you think did it? It wasn't ESPN. Who else could it have been? You're saying TKO must have played a big role. They played the only role. The hate that WWE fans have for TKO is immense. WrestleMania doesn't feel special anymore. I can't speak to the latter part, but it's like, who else would have banned Andreas? Oh, well, WWE. But guys, like, come on. Like, that is TKO. They're not, I mean, they're not like utterly the same, but they're not like, hugely distinct entities. Luke, did you see Brendan's take on the White House card? I did. He texted me about it. It was so fucking cringe, this person writes, and it was a horrible take. I just rewatched The Night Comes for Us. Can you rank your favorites from that genre? Well, that's a weird way to ask a question. Probably The Raid 2, and then The Night Comes for Us after that. But there's other ones I can't even get started in. Yes, I did see Brendan's take, and he texted me about it, and, you know, he's like, it may sound like it's coming after you. It's not. And I'm going to take him at his word. I mean, obviously, I just don't agree. You know, first of all, I want to be very clear about this. I've never called for a boycott for UFC White House. Not once. I've never called. I'm not boycotting it. I'm going to cover it. You know what I mean? Like, never. Not been one time. Again, this is why I'm like, it was important that he texted me, and I'm glad that he did. And I appreciate it. Because I've never, maybe there's somebody else calling for a boycott. I've literally never done that. Like, I'm not interested in a boycott. I'm interested in actually watching what happens, both because these fights are relevant and these big stars, and then also, like, what does this end up doing or meaning or signifying in other dimensions, as we've talked about a million times. So, like, I actually am, like, thinking a lot about how I'm going to cover it. You know what I mean? So I've never done that at all. Never once. Never once. And if people want to boycott it, I certainly understand, but that's not a position I've, like, openly advocated. It's the first thing I'm going to say. But the second thing I'm going to say is the part of the argument, like, there's a little bit of truth to what he's saying, in the sense that there are people, if you were around when the sport was, like, barely hanging on, and Brendan's been in the sport for some time. I called one of his, pre-UFC fights when he fought at George Mason. You know, I met him at this event. And if you've been around for a long time, even now to a degree, you look at the sport and you say to yourself, it has ascended to heights once thought imaginable. You know, can't we just say, and the argument would go, looking at this event, can't we just say, look at the heights that the sport has reached? And again, if you've been witness to how much difficulty there was to get people to care about the sport, and how minimal a profile it had for so many years, there is something to be said for that. I certainly recognize that. But the problem, and this is the argument that I've been making for some time, is that it got pretty fucking mainstream. The last turn of the screw that elevated its position quite literally within the federal government, because that's what we're talking about here, is by taking a partisan turn. And so, yes, there is a sense to be had here about, like, wow, look at how far MMA has come. And I think they'll probably tell a lot of that story during the broadcast, as well as, many other things. And again, it's not like 100% without merit. There's something to be said for that. But you can't divorce that from the fact that that last push up that got it to this level was an explicit turn to reject a portion of the fan base and reject a portion of, frankly, the country, in favor of favoring another version. And then that version politically likes to dominate the other one through means legal and otherwise, and illegal. And so, like, you can't, this is what I mean, like, you can't get away from the political nature of it. And that's just one avenue of it. Again, the real nature of it is that it's a reward for the UFC for helping to launder his image after January 6th and to put him back into power. Like, this is a reward for that. That's why it exists. You just can't get away from these things. These things, like, people want to just look at it like it's a fight event, and it's a fight event at a special location. And shouldn't we just be happy about that? And I'm sorry to say, in my opinion, take it for what it's worth, you don't have to agree, that is only a small portion of what this is. It is actually much, much, much more than that. And those other things that it also is are fucking horrible. And I'm going to say it. How was your fraternity experience at William & Mary? It was great. I left my fraternity at William & Mary after they sang Dixie at initiation. Jesus. No, they didn't do that. Did you encounter anything similar? No. I was in a fraternity full of nerds and, I mean, no, not like that at all. If anything, we were too nerdy. I was in Sigma Pi, which was Unit E on the row. I don't know what it is anymore, but it was Unit E at the time. And no, dude, if anything, those guys were great. All the guys in my fraternity ended up being lawyers and doctors. Like, no, it's fine. Luke, you're giving out 300K bonuses for episode 300. I wish, brother. I wish. What did you think of Michael Jordan's time on the Wizards? Did it help or hurt the franchise? It was fun if you're a DC guy and Michael was here. I don't think that's really what set the franchise back. It was just cool to have basketball royalty in a Wizards uniform. Here comes Godzilla. Do you agree that Chipotle has fallen off? No. No. I didn't lock my door this time. No, I don't understand. I mean, okay, it's definitely expensive, and I see people being like, they don't give you enough food. Dog, how much food do you need? I'm 6'4". I'm about 275, 280, depending on the day. And I get full eating at Chipotle. What the fuck are you animals doing? Like, what is your order? I'll tell you my order. I'll go exactly through my order. I get rice, pinto beans, double chicken, fajitas. I get salsa verde. I'm saying like a donk. I understand. So I get salsa verde. I get the salsa rojo. Again, I'm saying it like a donk. I get the pico, no cheese. I put half a portion of sour cream and then lettuce on top. That's my order. Bro, I'm full. What are y'all doing at Chipotle? This is not enough food. I don't get it. Have you seen Laith Maroof on Chris Hedges? No. Incredible insight from Lebanon. I need to. Guys, I'm very, very behind. I wish, but no, I've not. Psychedelics, ketamine, etc. treatments are mostly nonsense. If they worked, Big Pharma would obviously develop them. They have no drug morals. That's true that they don't have drug morals. I certainly agree with that. However, and again, I'm telling you, a guy I know who's a scientist told me that like the studies that Rogan cites have a lot of methodology questions to them. I didn't know anything about this drug when I saw Rogan there. So I cannot go like, oh, I've done a lot of reading about it and I can tell you a lot. I don't know anything about it. I genuinely know more than the minimal amounts I've been exposed to conversations or reading about it. But you might be right. You might be right. Espanol, what's up, bro? Have you been following the Mike Vrabel, Diana Rossini story? Yes, I have. If so, do you think this type of stuff happens more often between reporters and the people they cover? I would say this is what I mean, guys. In general, fucked up, I'm not talking about sexual, but like fucked up relationships in terms of ethical boundaries being upheld between athlete and the person they cover. Like it is common for that to be completely compromised. Guys, you can't do what Adam Schefter does and maintain ethical relationships with your sources. Not possible. Anybody you see constantly just doing announcements about what's coming. Now, if that's the only thing that they do, you know, like how much of a problem is that? You know what I mean? But like you're developing a relationship with management to get scoops. How are you going to report on that management? You're not. You know what I mean? You have to give up. You're getting like you're making a trade. Like, guys, everybody makes a trade. Everybody makes a trade. You can make a trade like I'm making a trade, which is I am cutting off my own access, right? I am trading that in. But what I get on the other side is I can just do and say whatever the fuck I want, right? I'm making that trade. Or you can do the opposite, which is that I'm going to surrender my ability to do that in order to get access and do favorable reporting as a way to, you know, do that kind of reporting. But you're making a trade one way or the other. Scoop trading is what they call that. Is not ethical. Not I mean, some of it is like maybe not ethical and also who cares, but like some of it is also not ethical, and then the other reporting that they do is fucked up. Now, that's not what we're talking about with Diana Rossini. Dude, Diana Rossini was from this market. I have disliked Diana Rossini for a long time. Othello will vouch for this. Othello's got some stories. Let me tell you, actually, not to blow up his spot a little bit here, but he actually has better stories about this than I do. I won't share them because those are for him to either say or not say. But he's got some skinny on this one. Let me just say this. First of all, when Scott McLuhan was here, his wife was intimating that she was doing things totally wrong. But even if all of that is not true, I actually grew to dislike her in this market because she had, during the time when Dan Snyder was really just, I mean, he was always a piece of shit. When he was like really leaning into his piece of shitness, her coverage in local media was so apologetic for Dan Snyder to the point where it really rubbed me the wrong way. To the point where I was like, what the fuck is wrong with this person? You know what I mean? Her and Britt McHenry was another one that was like this, where I couldn't understand how people like, do you, I mean, you know, then Redskins, now Commanders fans, they just wanted the team to do better. And I don't, you know, there was no real beef, but I detested her local coverage. And not for the reasons that are related to like whatever happened with Mike Vrabel. I'm not even suggesting that. I'm just saying, even if like before any of that was relevant, we're talking in the 2010s, her coverage of the team was so pro Dan Snyder, it was nauseating. I hated it. Then she got promoted real fast from like local reporter to national reporter. And then it comes out, you guys, I'm sure, have seen the avalanche of things that have been produced, which all of it is not necessarily like dispositive of what people are suggesting. You know, a lot of it is very suggestive and maybe not much more than that. However, just before the live chat today, there's photos of her, what appear to be kissing Mike Vrabel at a bar, you know, back all the way in 2020. You know, I'll say this at a bare minimum. I have a ton of questions about what has been made public. I do think that people have jumped to a lot of conclusions and without the kind of information that makes some of those conclusions possible. However, if you had told me back in, I don't know when she left this market, but whatever year that was back in the 2010s, if you had told me that of all the people who are going to get caught up in one of these kinds of scandals, it would have been her, it would have been the least surprising news imaginable. It would have been the least fucking surprising news imaginable. I'd have been like, oh yeah, right. I believe that. So I got to tell you, I've been, you know, I've made a little time for that one. There's a lot of things I don't have time for. I've made time for that one because I've been like, oh, okay, let's see what we have here, you know. And I've seen people try to be like, oh, you know, they don't go after men like this and blah, blah, blah. And listen, there's something to be said for that. I mean, men aren't banging, to my knowledge, you know, Mike Vrabel, you know, whatever. But okay, there might be some kind of double standard in the sense that, like, you know, guys are also getting engaged with best practices that are totally unethical in the industry, and they're not having to face any comeuppance for it. And this kind of salacious sexual nature of this story is the thing that is powering it. Okay, maybe so. But when this scandal broke, I was like, oh, I've been waiting for this one to break wide open. My man Othello he knows where the bodies are buried, bro. I'll just say that. VA resident here who voted yes on Tuesday. How reliable are the Dems to fight Trumpism? Not much, but you got to do what you can. They suffer a branding problem for this independent voter. Yes, that is a big one. They don't tend to show much fight. It tends to be easier to bank on their quitting than it does their powering through. But if they do show fight, it is important to back it up. I'll even say who I can't stand, but Hakeem Jeffries had a good message for this when the Dems won recently, saying maximum warfare is the posture. And I was like, all right, fair enough. Ted Cruz's Senate bill will probably be the same, but include $5 billion to Israel. Isn't it also great how TKO's PAC influences those passing legislation? That's the legislative process. Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with Ted Cruz's bill versus the other ones. He's suggesting it's going to be different from the House bill. We don't really know how. But if there's a way to shoehorn in fealty to Israel, I'm sure to your point, he will try. Justin says the two high college kids from the University of Wisconsin creating a satirical newspaper out of their dorm room probably didn't predict owning InfoWars. Oh, you mean like what you call it? The Onion? Yeah, the Onion now owns InfoWars. Thank God. No one deserves to be more bankrupted than Alex Jones. Like, just a truly odious piece of shit. There are Newtown parents who had to move across the country and can't visit their children's graves because of the things that Jones did that make them essentially being hunted or harassed impossible. They can't even visit their kid's grave. He deserves all of it. Luke, if you had to do only 5 exercises, lifts ever again, what would they be? You want to hinge, so deadlift. You want to pull up. Do push up, row, squat. There you go. Luke, next time you commentate an XFC card, let the donks know in advance. I bet a lot would want to check it out. Yes, I will be there. I will be there. Back to Iowa City. You're right. I should have said something. Oh my God, guys. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point, but it's just been a lot going on. I've always thought Prime GSP would still be champion at 170. With Islam now at the helm, how would him versus peak GSP play out? I mean, I think GSP is a better athlete in his prime, and I think his takedown defense would be better, and I think his striking would be better. Not the striking that he so much had in like 2013 or something, but if he were like in his prime following best practices, I just think that dude, he was just such a plus athlete, and like he just got better so fast, and he had such precision with his skill. Like he was a marvel. Yeah. All right. Oh, there's one more. Why are whatever. Why are pundits acting like it's a given Ronda versus Gina does crazy numbers? Haven't seen casuals or hardcores remotely interested in that card. Casuals, no. Hardcores, yes. But it's Netflix, and the scale that Netflix has is unmatched by a considerable distance. I think Netflix is 4 times the size of Paramount Plus. You know what I mean? Just in the I think that's right. Worldwide, I think it's 4 times the size. So you're just talking about a level of scale that's hard to compete with. That's why. It's just that Netflix can make anything feel big, and they've got the scale to make it go that way. You know what I mean? Okay, there actually is more. Would you ever do something with Dave Smith, ex-Legion of Skanks, now Libertarian? Dude, I did a show with him already. You and him are the only pods I listen to nowadays. Yeah. Dude, I did a show with Dave Smith and Louis J. Gomez. We did a UFC preview, and Big J. Okerson came as well. And then also I think like Izzy came, and Dan Hardy came, and a bunch of donks came, and it was fucking great. Like we had a grand old time. So I actually I don't know if they remember that, but I remember that. This was, maybe 10 years ago at this point, maybe a little bit less than that. But yeah, those guys are I don't agree with Dave on everything, but he's been really great on some key issues like Israel. So yeah. All right. I got to go catch a bird. I got to go get in traffic. I'm out of here. I will see y'all later. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. And there is MK tomorrow. It's going to be with Oscar Willis, and then XFC on Saturday. I'll have a reacts for Aljo and Zalal on Sunday, MK on Monday, and then and then Monday is my daughter's birthday. How about that? All right. We're out of here, boys and girls. Thank you so much for watching. Back to normal schedule next week. We're out of here. Until then, stay frosty. Bye, y'all.